All right. Good afternoon, Donal. How are you?
Afternoon, Peter. I'm good. And
Good.
yourself?
Yeah, I'm wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Excellent. Excellent.
So, Donal, tell me a bit about yourself and Community Finance Ireland, please.
I'm originally from Cavan in the Republic. I joined what was then known as Ulster Community Investment Trust in 2004. It's now Community Finance Ireland. As an organisation itself, it specialises in lending to what's often referred to as the third sector. So we lend to voluntary-led organisations, lend money generally between £20,000 and £500,000 to organisations across a very wide portfolio that would include sport, faith-based lending, cooperatives, foundations, some housing associations even, but mainly, I think at this stage, we're about 42% invested in sport, all types of sports that you can think of. But community halls, community centres, community workspace. When I joined in 2004, 97% of our portfolio was invested in community-owned workspace. So we've seen a lot of changes over the last nearly 20 years, and looking forward to the future. Yeah.
And what would you say have been your biggest learnings, whether they be in life or in business?
I suppose my life has been this business for the last 18 years, so the two are very much intertwined. And I suppose the biggest learning that I've gotten is the resilience, the level of resilience that this community sector has. I mean, I started a loan portfolio in the Republic of Ireland for the organisation back in 2008. Now, what a time to start lending money, right? But yet the money went out the door. It went out the door and it came back, which is so important in our business. It came back with interest, never questions asked. We have faced the further 4 or 5 years after 2008. We continue to grow year on year, both in Northern Ireland and the Republic in terms of our portfolios. We then faced the pandemic over the last number of years. Took a bit of a sniffle, but back on its feet extremely quickly. 5-6 months where maybe moratoriums and on repayments were offered. Not all took up the offer of moratoriums, but any that did were back up on their feet again 5-6 months later. And I suppose I probably, as chief executive of this organisation, first and foremost, I'm the only ever chief executive that hasn't come from the banking sector. I've never worked in a bank. I've often stood in one on the wrong side of the counter, but my background is all in community work, community development. I left college, I suppose, with a degree in economics and geography, but went in to do other postgrads and ended up with a master's in social enterprise and cooperative. So my first jobs were managing social enterprises in Cavan and building up then gradually in terms of county-wide remit and province-wide, and then ultimately now covering the entire island of Ireland as this organisation. But that's my background, and my background is in rural Ireland. It's in being involved with your local football club, seeing how that works from an economic perspective, but understanding also behind it the vast number of different tentacles that it has in terms of social impact, mental health, well-being, all that sort of stuff, and in terms of spin-off of jobs to the local economy, etc. So that's where I'm keen to see this thing develop. And us in Community Finance Ireland, we're in a very privileged position to be able to facilitate that social impact. And what we basically, the phrase that we use from time to time is we enable communities enable themselves. It's not us that actually creates the impact, but we're providing the cash that facilitates that impact to take place at a local level. But that's it. The learning for me is, if you're ever stuck, and you see it in your own personal life then, Peter, if something, like my father died about a year ago actually, and how you see a community rallying around in so many different ways, and it comes back down to, when everyone else is gone, you'll always have your community to turn to. And that's just me and my community, but it's the same for absolutely everybody, that they have to have, regardless of maybe religion or faith, the most important thing people need to believe in is themselves. And once you have that community backing you to say, yeah, don't, believe in yourself, back yourself, it means quite a bit.
And has there ever been a coach or mentor that's had a significant impact on you, Donal?
I was only saying this to the family the other day. I'm a great believer in the universe. And, if you are hell-bent on something and it turns around and you're declined, or, you don't succeed at it, There's always a reason for that. You just don't know it yet. So the example that I gave, I think my kid is looking to go into a secondary school at the moment next year, and I've warned him against, being distraught if he doesn't get a particular school. There's a reason behind that. So the example that I gave is that around about the time I was interviewing for different jobs, for Community Finance Ireland, when I was taking on the role back around 2004, I had a lot of other interviews to do as well for what I would have thought were fairly high profile roles that had great opportunities for me at the time, and I didn't get them. And there was a reason why I didn't get them, because this opportunity came up. And even before that, every single time, the job before this one, I came across a secretary of that organization. She was a retired German teacher, a wonderful, wonderful mentor, no longer with us. And she got me to cut myself on in terms of dealing with people, talking to people at different levels, knowing when to keep my mouth shut and ears open, how to deal with people at all these different levels. And that was she seen the potential, I suppose, I didn't see in myself at that time. When I came into this organization, my previous CEO, a guy called Harry McDade, was a very, very strong mentor as well. And I know he does mentorship work across Northern Ireland still to this day. But learned a lot from him as a career banker, I suppose, in terms of the banking side of what it is that we do, the lending, the commercial focus end of things. I mean, we'd been going well, but he certainly showed us how to develop this business in a much more efficient manner. And now happy to be able to say that I can hopefully bring it on to the next level in his absence.
Very good. And what do you have any favorite quotes or sayings, Donal, that
I'd always refer back
with you?
That German teacher, Peter, taught me never step on the crocodile when you're crossing the river. And that is the most important one for me, because if I bring it into this world, okay, this organization, Community Finance Ireland, is led by a board of voluntary directors, and those voluntary directors are themselves connected to clients of ours, potential clients of ours. So when we're dealing with our target market, we cannot take this approach that perhaps the conventional banking institution might. When I'm talking to Peter Magee as a local representative in his local organization, and I'm working on a transaction with him, I have to have at the back of my mind that Peter Magee may wish to buy a share in Community Finance Ireland, which is fully redeemable at any time, doesn't pay a dividend, and ultimately may end up on our board. So if I'm cheeky with Peter today, he could be my boss within the next couple of months. So these are things you need to bear in mind. And so if you bring that mentality to work, mentality to dealing with stakeholders, you might not always like what they say, you might not always like their direction of travel, but you need to learn to be diplomatic. The art of surrender is so important. You're gonna lose a lot of battles to win the war in the end. And it's getting on and developing relations with people, because at the end of the day, you don't know what important part they're going to have to play in your career or your personal life or whatever it might be.
And who would be the first person that comes to mind when you think about the word success?
Oh, Katie Taylor, without a doubt. I mean, you talk about, go back to the days of JFK and him quoting Bernard Shaw and things like, believing in things that are have yet to be. I mean, Katie Taylor put herself out there on a pedestal to be shot at, or, knocked off that pedestal to say, I'm going to win an Olympic gold medal in a sport that wasn't even in the Olympics. So how can you top that?
Very good. Yeah, no, I've seen her a few times. She comes across really well. Oh, that's a great answer. I haven't had her before, so very good. And what have you learned about yourself during your journey?
That the skills, background and knowledge and network that I have, that I take for granted, other people, depending on the sphere that they're in, look upon it as rocket science. And it's only when you continually connect with new networks that you actually appreciate, me and the team here in Community Finance Ireland, that what we're sitting on in terms of experience is something that other people are really in awe of. And I don't mean that in a kind of obnoxious manner, but the way we look at it is that we're now in a position to help other organizations through constructive collaborations get the best out of themselves. And it's not costing us a thought, it's actually benefiting us as well.
Mhm. And what would you say, what's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing?
Biggest challenge right now is rising interest rate environments, Peter. We have been used to making loans available to the third sector, mostly on an unsecured basis, in terms of levels of hundreds of thousands of pounds to organisations over maybe a maximum 15-year term, developing relations with them and understanding that we are a social finance organisation. We're not a strictly commercially focused bank. So everything that we do has to have immediate social impact and the necessary repayment capacity as well. And people have, first of all, we have to cross that challenge of encouraging them to understand that debt is a good thing. Debt is a tool, if used properly, can give you the autonomy to develop the ambitions that you've always had, right? So once we get across that and we've had these relationships, now what we're facing into is the steepest increase in interest rates over the shortest period of time that I can remember. And a lot of the people older than me and in the sector can remember. We need to, ensure that this is not such a shock to the system that it discourages communities from taking on projects that they need to enhance the quality of life for their community of followers. So this is, in my view, more than likely going to be a short-ish to medium-term issue. It will settle itself in due course. What I'm very, very keen to promote is the fact that we have access to finance. We have the access to the cash. Yes, there's a repayment capacity. Organizations may need to redraft their vision. They may need to downsize it a bit to ensure they have the repayment capacity to take on maybe a smaller level of borrowing, but we have still access to this cash, a lot of it. And that's, for me, the most important thing. We can worry about none of us can plan for 3, 4, 5 years time. What's important is that we get these projects done, that we get the infrastructure in place, and then thankfully as an organization we have the autonomy to be able to deal with issues as they arise in our own time, in collaboration with the client thereafter. It's a great privilege to be in that position.
No, that's fantastic. And what would you say if you could speak to somebody that's at the fledgling stage of their business or their organization? What sort of advice would you give to that person?
Always listen to the market. We have come across quite a few people that would come to us with concepts, just testing the waters. Now, obviously, we don't fund concepts, but what we would always say is, look, where did this idea come from? And what you need to be always wary of are these people with the midlife crisis that wake up in the morning and they're afraid that, if I get run over today, I won't have left a legacy and nobody will remember me. And so they're like, okay, we'll try and railroad a crowd into my way of thinking, influence them into, we need to access this grant fund to develop this piece of infrastructure. Ultimately, we'll have to locally fundraise some funds as well, and then we'll borrow a heap of money. And when it all boils down to it, the only person that actually wanted this piece of investment was the guy that's gotten out of bed with the midlife crisis. And when it hits upon difficult financial times, nobody else is there to bail them out. Because the community are like, well, actually, I'm not having none of that. So what you have is you have debt on a community for a project that never really was wanted in the first place. And that you've been sucking the interest out of this organization and out of this community of interest that actually is going to go nowhere. And it's so this is something that we need to be very wary of. And we always say, look, talk to your community first. 20 odd years ago, when I joined the sector, first of all, I remember stakeholders going around communities across Northern Ireland and the Republic doing community audits. And it was like, a flip chart in 4 different corners of the community, all the local community in there saying, a wish list. What's your Santee letter for the adults in this community? And let money be no object. What do you think that you'd need to make this a better place? And back then it was probably a phone kiosk somewhere, or a lagging jacket for the water pump at the crossroads, to stop the water freezing when you needed it most during the winter. Now today it's glass houses, broadband. Broadband. This sort of stuff. But the concept is still the same, and we need the stakeholders to get out there and continue to do that work, because that's ultimately where the community have put up their hands saying, that's what we need. There's a priority list. Work off. And the best projects we've ever financed over the last 20 years have been related to those ideas, those community audits, because they're born within the community.
That's great advice, Donal. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you and Community Finance Ireland, what's the best way to go about that?
We'd like to think that we're fairly accessible via social media. So our website is communityfinanceIreland.com. We're on Twitter at ComFinanceIRL, but I'm sure if you just put in Community Finance Ireland, you'll find us. The same on LinkedIn and Facebook. We have on Spotify a series of podcasts as well that people can listen to from our clients, both in Northern Ireland and indeed the Republic. And there are a couple of videos of case studies from us as well on our website. And on YouTube. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So look, Donal Traynor from Community Finance Ireland, thanks very much for your time. It's been great to hear about you, your organisation and your journey. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Peter.